We're going to call up Mike Butcher, and we're back in a couple of minutes to start the panel discussion. He's here now, so let's all crack on. Is there anything we wait for? Yeah, can I start? Yeah, that's good. Is this way?
Hello everyone. Hey, you guys over there, do you want to come in or not? You don't have to. If you don't want to listen, don't worry, but just come in if you want to. There's a ton of room over here.
Mike.
Right, come over here.
Thank you for being here.
I'm going to screw your stage up.
No, it's fine. You just do your thing, Mike.
Put this down there.
Move my laptop, it's fine.
Yeah, you don't need that there. Come on.
Yeah. Okay, let's do this. Oh, you want to move this? Where are we going?
Now we're going to have a little chat.
I love it. And you've made your own stage.
This is branding.
It's actually water. Do you want a bit?
I've got one. I wouldn't mind a refill though if anybody would be so kind.
Yeah, that would be good. So, quick introduction. So, everybody knows who the editor at Large of Techcrunch.
I'm a journalist.
You're a journalist.
We have this little blog called TechCrunch. We like to write about startups and venture capital. It started in San Francisco in 2005 and in Michael Abington's house. And now it's owned by evil corporations. Thank you very much, AOL. The Dark Lord of AOL, we are watching you. And now it's owned by Verizon. So it's all cool. How's it all going?
Good. You're getting a few claps for that. I think I went down. Very good.
There's too many fucking English people on stage, right? Fucking English people.
I think it has been about 50% of people.
They think they're so fucking funny.
Well, we are pretty awesome, to be fair.
Arrogant gits.
I'm going to ask you a question.
That's the general idea, Jason.
You tell me, you know
That's
more
why
about
I've
this.
flown here.
You know more about this than I do. Who is the young Mike Butcher? I'm not saying you're old.
Fuck!
But who was the very early young Mike Butcher? Who was, you weren't always in the tech world. So where did you start out? Did you start out in, I heard of some kind of like, newspaper? Like what was the kind of beginning? When did you think I want to get into the tech world? What was the kind of moment for you?
It was around about 1850, and the horse and carriage was quite clearly going to be replaced by the internal combustion engine. And I was thinking, I said to my master at the time, I was trying to shoe a horse. Dude, you've really got to look at these driverless coaches. They've got horseless coaches, right? Amazing. Horseless coaches are the future. There's going to be a whole transport infrastructure based on horseless coaches. And he was like, shoot the fucking horse, will you shut up? But you know, time went on, and I became a journalist and worked in newspapers. And I was more of a geeky journalist. You know that person in your office who's like always fiddling with the technology, and like when your computer's shut down, you were like, that's the person you go to, like, Mike, what can I do? Like, turn it off and turn it on again. So I was the geeky journalist. In the newsroom, I was the one who was always fixing the computers. So I thought I might as well do technology journalism. So that's how I got into that.
It seemed to work out quite well. What happened to the Uber for coach horses?
Uber for horseless coaches. I don't know. There was some guy called Elon Musk took that one over. Yeah, no, I don't know. Yeah, no, it's not happening.
Tech Hub. I want to talk about Tech Hub, and you've got to give me a serious answer to it, because this is super, super important. I was around when you were building this. I actually think I came to see Tech Hub when you were showing the very first sort of viewings and so on.
You poor thing.
We didn't actually go for it yet, so I don't know, you obviously didn't pitch us well enough or something.
We didn't know what the hell we were doing, to be honest with you. I just wanted a bigger office, and then all these other people turned it up.
For those of you who don't know, so Tech Hub in Shoreditch, I don't know, how many years back did you start Tech Hub?
Well, we had the idea in 2009, and I think the thing is I mean, I suppose the sort of serious point about this is that what sort of happened with technology is it kind of became part of the creative industry. Clusters, when you walk down the street, you bump into people you know, you have ideas, you know, fire off each other, and that's kind of what happened in the tech world, you know, because, you know, all of a sudden all you needed was Wi-Fi and a laptop, create a company. And so in East London, this whole sort of kind of movement started happening. It was a cheaper part of London, you could get cheap offices there, you know, you could live fairly cheaply there. And so it became like the zeitgeist. And I think the co-working movement that kind of happened in North America, we imported that idea, but kind of put a kind of British flavour on it as well. And that was the idea. And I think it's really good clustering, being literally physically located close to each other, so you can bump into each other, you can have coffee, lunch, that kind of thing. That's how things happen. And in fact, Reid Hoffman, who's the founder of LinkedIn, he has this kind of phrase called rapid scaling, where you network the shit basically out of yourself. You get super, super networked, you know, and you meet tons of people. I'm going to try, after we've done this, I'm going to try and exercise, and I'm going to do an exercise with you guys and how you do that. But yeah, so that sort of thing worked really, really well. But for the first 6 months, nothing happened. And we had a Russian television company turn up looking for Silicon Roundabout. And they said, "Where is Silicon Roundabout? We have heard it comes from Russia." And I was like, "It's over there, where is it?" And he was like, "Okay." So he had to basically film this empty space, call it Silicon Roundabout. It's very funny. But yeah, so co-working is a good thing, and I think it's a fantastic thing. You know, in Stockholm there's Sub 46. I don't know if you guys
got something from Sub. Is he around?
And so it's great, it's a fantastic thing, and you know, just keep going. You know?
Now there are hundreds of these spaces. You have so many now. I think you were one of the first. And because of that, you've been meeting the Prime Minister, David Cameron, telling him how to basically run his country and how he can support startups more specifically.
Yeah.
Did he listen to you?
Many's the time David Cameron will wake me in the middle of the night and say, "Mike, how am I going to run the UK?" And often I said, "Shut up, go to sleep." Well, I mean, I did actually literally sit in front of him actually just before the 2012 Olympics, and they said, "What do you think we should do with the Olympic Village?" And I said, fill it with engineers, you know?
And he said no.
They did. They were like, "Thank you very much, goodbye." But they should have done that. But yeah, politicians have become fascinated by technology sector because it's the new economy, it's the future of many jobs. It may destroy some jobs, but it will create others, right? So it's become a huge political issue. And so that's why you see politicians jumping on board the whole kind of technology train now these days, because it is a very, very hot issue.
I mean, how much do you think the balance of influence needs to be? How much do you think that governments need to influence the startup culture? For example, I mean, entrepreneurs are quite entrepreneurial, right? I mean, they kind of get on with it. You think so? The ones that, I mean, for example, look at Sweden, for example. I wouldn't say the government's done masses and masses of things in this country, yet you produce the most number of billion-dollar companies per capita. So my point is, how much do the governments need to get involved versus it's just going to happen anyway?
Most of the time they should just get the fuck out of the way. But the interesting thing that happened in Stockholm many years ago during the dot-com boom and bust is they put dark fibre into the streets, and then when the bust came, they had all this super fast broadband. And what did you have out of that? You ended up with a whole bunch of startups coming out of Sweden, especially out of Stockholm, because the broadband was super cheap. So what government should concentrate on is education, educating, getting kids learning to code, reinvigorating the universities, that kind of thing, and infrastructure, so broadband, 4G, and the rest of the time, the only other thing they need to do is make it easy to fail as a company, so that entrepreneurs, if things go wrong, you can close the company down, you can pivot, you can change, you can hire people, you can fire people relatively easily. Now, I know that's kind of like a weird thing to say in many of the Nordic countries who have incredible social systems. In the States, they basically call you communists. Which is kind of weird, right? But I think it's a fantastic thing, and in a way, I think it's something sometimes really weird. So many Scandinavian countries don't have more entrepreneurs, because for heaven's sake, if you fail, the government's going to pay your rent anyway, aren't they? So you might as well keep going, right? But yeah, just get out of the way and mostly just put in infrastructure so that it's easy to create companies, easy to scale, easy to raise money. easy for people to understand the value of equity in companies. Many people in Europe, when they join a technology company, say, I want more salary than I want equity or shares in the company. And that's the dumb way to think about it. The way to think about it is actually having a stake in the business, in the same way they have in the US. That way you benefit. I mean, the receptionist at Facebook became a multi-millionaire, right? So, and invested startups. You know, the guy who put some graffiti on the wall of Facebook's first office made $700 million, right? So that's how you do this. And you don't screw around saying, yes, I just want $5 grand extra a year, please. Thanks very much.
It's interesting you say about the equity, because we have some pain points with this in Sweden. I don't know if any of you are kind of familiar with this problem we have, but the current share options pool set up in Sweden is pretty damn awful, actually, at the moment. And they're working on it. I know that the enterprise minister is sort of working on it, supposedly, and hopefully that will change soon. But it's basically becoming quite unattractive giving people share options. It's just one of the many things I think has caught the government a little bit off guard here in Sweden. Suddenly all these unicorns I speak of suddenly came about.
It's very short-sighted because entrepreneurs are now mobile. Even in Russia, the Russians are kind of leaving because they know that somebody wants a piece of the action along the way. So there's a massive brain drain going on there. And entrepreneurs will just move. They will move to the jurisdictions of the countries where they get the best funding, the best networks, the best support, and they will just move. So it's a globalized economy now.
I hope the Prime Minister of Sweden is going to hear this talk. I think we definitely.
Hello, Prime Minister. Are you watching?
Stefan.
Yes, I'm watching.
If you're watching, change this shit. So. Sweden, how many, you must have met tons and tons of really awesome Swedish founders, probably guys, guys.
No, they're all rubbish.
Founder guys. You can't say that in Sweden, they take it really personally. They're not like us. It's not
Hi, friends.
But is there anything in common, you think? Have you kind of met any of these, especially this kind of the higher profile success cases, is there anything you kind of see in Sweden as, yeah, this seems to be why? Because there is something happening here, like you must admit that in Sweden, this number is coming from somewhere. There's something in this small population that's breeding these very talented entrepreneurs.
I mean, it's pretty obvious. Incredible education system, very stable country, access to global markets. You've done this before. I mean, the country, the big advantage of having a smaller country in Europe, and when I said, okay, what's it, 9, 10 million people, right?
9.5.
Yeah, so a slightly smaller country in Europe actually is an advantage because you're not really going to make a massive home market, so you've got to go international from day one. Super advantage. One of the disadvantages in Poland, for instance, in Europe, is that with 40 million people, you can do a clone of an e-commerce company or something in Poland and do very well, and just do it in Polish, and nobody will ever hear about you outside of Poland, and you'll be fine. That's okay, totally cool, but it won't scale internationally. When you have a small European country, you've got to go international from the word go. That's one of the disadvantages of the UK. 60 million people all speaking English. You can basically do very good business in the UK and not break a sweat. So there's a lot of advantage actually having a small country because it makes you hungrier. And Sweden, obviously, ever since you guys invaded us with your Vikings and your, crazy blonde blood, which we didn't really do very much with, you've got this reputation. So keep going. There are lots and lots of international companies that come out of Sweden. And so you have a history of it, so it's cool.
You talked about the sort of taking a concept and doing it in a market thing, so it's going to lead me nicely to on that topic of sort of taking a concept from the US and then doing it in Europe, and also nicely on to say rocket internet, we basically do that extremely well. Oliver Samvar, genius or copycat? What do you think?
Evil genius with a layer and probably weapons. No, he's great. Hi, Ollie.
He looks like the kind of guy that would have some kind of nuke buried under his
target. He's like $1 billion.
His salespeople have nuke targets, isn't he?
Oliver Samvar and Rocket Internet, incredible. I mean, their whole thing is we're not really interested in innovation as concepts, conceptual innovation. Their innovation is around execution. So basically, they just make everything they do better and better and better. So whenever they launch Amazon clone in Indonesia, they They basically give the guy a template and off he goes, right? It's like a photocopy of a business plan, and off they go, but they scale very aggressively. In a way, a weird thing about Rocket Internet and the way that the Summer Brothers operated was that actually it was a little bit like Apocalypse Now. You sent in a 22-year-old, and they'd come out a year later going, the horror, the horror. But, you know, but they would know how to scale an internet company super, super fast. So actually, I know lots of ex-Rocket Internet people who, you know, kind of had a terrible time because they're highly pressured. But they ended up with incredible, like a finishing school for entrepreneurs in a way. So, you know, they do what they do, and it's awesome, but it's a different kind of business model to the kinds of things that TechCrunch celebrates, which is much more conceptual innovation, brand new things that people have never done before, new ideas, that kind of things that scale globally, which are true technology platforms as opposed to selling furniture in the Philippines or something.
So, you're a fairly big ambassador, I'd say, for Europe and European startups. Do you sort of hand on heart believe that Europe will one day be a more successful climate than the US? Do you think that's going to happen? Or do you not know? Or what is your gut feeling?
Yes and no, but we do different things. I mean, there are things that we do in Europe which are typically different to what they might do in San Francisco. You know, we have access to hundreds of years of culture, hundreds of years of design sensibility. Some of the hardware coming out of Europe is incredible because we have amazing engineering skills which you just can't get anywhere else in the world. So we have huge advantages in some aspects, and then to some extent though, Silicon Valley will always have a 50-year head start on the rest of the world. But the point is not to compare yourself to the US or compare yourself to Silicon Valley. If you want to do any kind of comparison at all, what you've got to do is compare yourselves to your next nearest neighbours, see how you're getting on. I've just been in Norway, literally yesterday, last 3 days, and because the economy is so reliant on oil, they've never really developed their tech sector. And they're only now just waking up to the fact that, you know, hold on, we're a Scandinavian country too, we're pretty well educated, why aren't we doing this? And so they've got to compare themselves to you guys, and they've got to compare themselves to the Finns and the Danish and all the rest of it. And that makes more sense to do that kind of comparison than it is to compare yourself to Silicon Valley, which, you know, developed the atomic weapon, for heaven's sake, you know, 60 plus years ago. So it's a different kind of scenario. But absolutely, I mean, most of the newest, biggest companies, many of them will come outside of America, outside of the US. The point about the US, it's a big, fat, juicy market, which all speaks one language, and all the plugs work the same, and off you go. So it's like going in China, but it's slightly easier, and you have to pay off less people.
I think there's one startup, Large that did extremely. I think they're now in $1 billion startup club.
Large is a very good example, out of France, where even the word entrepreneur is kind of generally misunderstood. Even though it's French. BlaBlaCar, ride sharing, they just did something completely different to Uber and all of those other guys, and did it their own way, and actually scaling internationally because they have a model that scales, rather than trying to, you know, copy everyone.
They sort of did the US thing though in some ways of buying up lots and lots of companies in lots of European markets, and you don't see that often in Europe, where fairly early stage startups start buying up and acquiring companies in multiple markets. I guess because it's harder, because of the language, because of the culture. They sort of did it anyway, and it seems to have paid off. I mean, would you say that's good advice to startups to be more aggressive, be more like the US in that sense, acquiring fast in different markets, buying up companies quite early?
Well, if you've got the money, great. One of the problems with entrepreneurs in Europe is there's often a dearth of money to be raised. Now, that's being fixed. Now it's pretty easy to raise early stage money in Europe from angels or seed rounds. The tough stuff is the follow-on funding, the Series A, and for that you kind of got to get on planes, you've got to get to the major cities in Europe, like Stockholm obviously, and you've got to go to, or London, or whatever. So, or if you want, you can raise US money if you want to go into the US market. So you've got to get on a plane, that's the way you create competition for term sheets around your business. You can't wait for the money to come to you. You can't wait for somebody to just magically build Silicon Valley on your doorstep. You've got to, as an entrepreneur, you've got to hustle. Dave McClure says, you know, the best startup has 3 people: an engineer, a designer, and a hustler. And you've got to work out what you are in that framework.
I could talk for hours and hours and hours. I have so many notes I could just, but I can corner you another time. But I want to ask you one question about the press. I haven't really touched on the TechCrunch side of things. So before we break, I knew your beer is empty, so we need to sort this problem out.
Oh, I'm dying up here.
TechCrunch. So you must get this question loads and loads and loads. And I've seen loads of videos. There's actually some really good videos on YouTube. If you YouTube search, was it Mike Butcher, how to pitch the press or something like that? Yeah. There's a really good video.
There's a couple of speeches I've done about how to pitch TechCrunch, how to pitch the press, how to make your opening gambit. One of the things I think is important is not to send enormous amounts of information and huge PDFs. It's about basically opening a conversation. Even you just got to show the journalist that you're smart, you know your market, you know what you're doing, and this is what you're going to be doing. You've got to give them warning. Give them warning, and also you've got to talk to them when everyone's interested in that subject. There's no use being in a startup. I was talking to Natalia, who's doing a cat startup here, where you get a what's it called? There's a cat thing.
Power. Is this the
so you put a thing around your cat's neck, and it tracks your cat as it goes around. It's super cool. Actually, it's like the NSA for cats. And you get to there she is. She's raising money. For any investors, she's raising money. It's over there. Smart one.
You've been endorsed by Mike
Smart
Butcher. You're going to raise billions now.
Smart entrepreneur, moved from Kiev, moved here to Uppsala. And so when Natalia wants to launch her company to the press, because there you go. Now we're talking.
Yes.
See, we're a bit more jealous now, right? When she wants to launch her company to the press, what she's going to do is she's got to target the media outlet that she wants to talk to, which is obviously TechCrunch, obviously, and but not to kind of just announce it out of the blue, but when there are other things going on in the marketplace which make her story hotter, right? So when Apple, I don't know, I'm making this up, but when Apple releases its wristwatch for cats, right? That's when you jump on board and say, hey, we already had that idea 6 months ago, we're about to go into production, boom, right? So you've got to hit it at the right time. Just doing it like suddenly randomly often doesn't work. You've got to pick your timing. But the amazing thing, form a relationship with the journalist somehow, chat to them on Twitter, send them a couple of ideas for stories, no big deal. And then when eventually you do want to talk to them, then they'll kind of know who you are and what you want to talk about, that kind of thing. That's just it's just common sense, basically.
Good advice. I'm going to leave it there, I think. I have so many more questions I could ask, but this has been fascinating. Thank you so much for coming to Uppsala.
Well, I've got two adverts. One is TechCrunch Disrupt in December 7th and 8th, and there'll be a hackathon. And I think I'm going to give some, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give some tickets away to the winners of the pitches tonight.
Awesome.
So I'll give some tickets away to the winners, and so they can come to Disrupt. Come to Disrupt in London. You'll have a great time, and I hope to see you there. If you need to reach out to me, it's mike@techcrunch.com, and if you put Uppsala in the subject line, I'll know that's where you emailed me from. And then I can obviously ignore it amongst the hundreds of other emails, but no, I'm joking, of course. But there you go. That's the way to reach out to me, and there you go. Stay in touch, okay?
Big round of applause. Thanks so much. Cheers. So, coming up next, we're running a tiny bit late.